the doctor that you went to, I don't think is one of the doctors I'm as familiar with. Can you tell me some about how you discovered him and what he was like?
Yeah. Well, so it's Dr. Setkos in the Thyroid Institute of Utah in Provo. And I actually found out about him through someone in our group. Someone mentioned his cash price and that also he takes insurance and has a really good record for helping insurance companies, like getting them to pay. The cash price wasn't too bad. And I was like, well, I mean, worst case scenario, we could do the cash price, but hopefully I can get our insurance to cover it. So I talked to them several times. The staff was great. They were really, really helpful. I did a video conference with him. I'm in Texas. So my consultation, the first one was just on video. You know, I sent over all my ultrasounds and all of my info to him, and he looked at everything and said, "You're a perfect candidate for RFA." So we flew out there, and my particular case was, you know, advanced and pretty expensive. Right. So it took about 2.5 hours to do the procedure. So that was, you know, a really long time, but his staff was great. The nurses were just trying to keep me calm and in my happy place.
Were you just locally numbed, or did they give you any conscious sedation?
They gave me Valium. Okay. They didn't do the conscious sedation. I was taking too much because of my cervical dystonia issue. Gotcha. And so I took Valium, which I think helped a little bit to relax me. There were some popping sounds. I'm sure you remember this.
Oh yeah.
Like popcorn, you know?
Yep. Inside your body. It's weird.
And it felt so weird. I mean, it felt like I was being electrified, like from the inside out. And I said, "Is that normal?" And he's so funny. He's Greek, and so he has this really cool accent. And he said, "Yes, that is the cells dying." And then he looks at the nurse and says, "Kick it up to 50 volts." You know, and like I'm like, oh my gosh, like so it was really cool. And he kept having me talk. He really wanted to hear me speak to make sure he wasn't getting anywhere close to my vocal cords, because I told him how scared I was of that. Right. You can have vocal cord damage from RFA too. But it was so large that he could only get to about half of it, and he stayed far away from the vocal cords. He gave a wide berth, which I really appreciated. I'll probably have to have a second one.
That was going to be my next question is how long are you going to wait for it to shrink before you have that second one? Do you know?
At least a year.
Okay.
He told me it shrinks the most in the first 90 days. And then over the year, it still continues slowly shrinking. I'm kind of frustrated right now because for some reason, the radiology centers here in Texas will not take orders from another state. So even though he's ordered an ultrasound, because I don't know exactly how much it shrunk. I know it shrunk a lot. I just can't tell how much. They won't take the orders from him because he's out of state. And I don't know why they care about that.
This is what I do. Get your ultrasound orders from just a regular primary care doctor. Because true. I had to actually stop going to my ENT. He was mad at me that I had RFA, even though I asked him before I did it if he would follow up with me later, you know, afterwards. And he said, yeah, absolutely. And then when I went back to see him, he was just super snarky and rude to me, and completely unwilling to acknowledge that this had been a good thing for me, and was just insistent I still needed to have my thyroid taken out. And so my primary care doctor has been the one who I go to her and I say, okay, I've been in consult with my RFA doctor. He wants me to have ultrasounds done on these dates. And she says, okay. And she sends the orders in for me. I don't know if you could you do that maybe?
I could. I need to find a new primary care too, because the one I was going to was the vegan doctor, and I'm not 100% vegan anymore. So she's mad at me. So.
Oh no. Not everybody can do that. That's really hard.
It was. I mean, and I still, I mean, I would say I'm like 70%, you know, which
Mm-hmm.
is better, you know, it's better than 0%, you know, but yeah, she's an all or nothing doctor.
Yeah,
And
that reminds me, there was a point you mentioned something earlier I wanted to touch on, is the fact that you said you felt like the lifestyle changes that she was recommending to you were good, but that the size of your mass was just so much that it wasn't going to really reverse the massive amount of growth. It would probably prevent it from continuing to grow,
yes,
but it wasn't going to shrink it. And you were at a point where you just had to do something.
yeah, I needed
And
relief.
and I
Yeah,
think there's so many people out there who are looking for that. They want
yes,
to, well, what should I do, in my diet? Or what supplements should I take? And I'm always like, if you've got a small nodule and it's not really causing you problems and you're just
right,
scared of it, then by all means go those natural routes. And I'm a very naturally minded person when it comes to all kinds of health and wellness types of things. But there is a tipping point that you reach where it's like, okay, we are past being able to reverse this. Now we got to
yeah,
manage it. And
yes,
I think both of us have been
absolutely.
there, and a lot of people have.
I think
So
so. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people want a natural, you know, remedy, which, like you said, is great. But,
mhm.
you know, when your airway's being cut off, I mean,
Right,
that,
you don't have
you
time to
know,
wait.
yeah, we're at a level red, you know, we got
Yeah.
to do something. And so, you know, I don't know if that time I was vegan for almost a year before I had RFA. And I don't know if it shrunk it. I couldn't tell that it did.
Mhm.
It definitely made me feel better. But I mean, at this point, the mass was so large. I just
Mhm.
don't see that there was any way it could shrink it significantly enough
Right.
to avoid RFA.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't have any conscious sedation, and that the office staff were really, really great. And so that kind of made me think that you did not have this done at a hospital setting. Was it a clinic,
Yes.
or his
Yes.
office?
A clinic. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it was in a medical building, but not a
Hmm.
hospital.
Hmm.
It was in basically, you know, what you think of as a patient room in a doctor's office. It was a very
Hmm.
small room.
Hmm.
And it felt very small with all those people in there.
I'm
I was a
sure. How
little,
many
I
people
was a
were
little,
there?
well, there was the doctor and 3 nurses. So
Hmm.
there was 4 people in addition to me in the room. Yeah, so it was just at the clinic. It wasn't at a hospital, which I kind of liked.
Hmm.
I'd like to go to hospitals if I can help it, especially during
Right.
COVID.
Exactly.
So that was nice. They only had 1 patient in the clinic at a time
Hmm.
for COVID. So that was nice. Literally all their attention was on me. It's a hard thing to explain to someone. I know you know what it was like. It just felt like I was being electrified from the inside out. And
But
I
would you say that it was painful at all, given that you had the lidocaine?
no, it wasn't painful at all.
Hmm.
I mean,
Just
even
unusual.
yeah, just a weird
Yeah.
feeling that I've
Yeah.
never felt before.
Yeah.
Um, and they put electrodes kind of on the inside of my thighs.
Hmm.
And I said, my thighs are really hot. Is that okay? And he said, yes, that is where the electricity is exiting your body. And I was like, oh
Yes.
my God.
Those are the grounding pads. So
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
weird. It's like, what are you putting on my legs? I thought this was happening on my neck.
I
But
know. My blood pressure was pretty high throughout the whole procedure. They were a little worried about it, but I was just really nervous. You know, I
yeah,
didn't know what to expect. And
yeah.
I don't like people messing with my neck. It was scary, that part. I was like, oh, I feel like, you know, but when I have it again, I think I will be a lot more calm and I'll know what to expect. It won't be as scary,
Hmm.
but it wasn't painful at all. And the recovery was nothing. I mean, I kept thinking, okay, am I going to feel worse than this? But I
Hmm.
never did. I mean, I really had hardly any soreness.
Did you use ice packs or take any medication, like over the counter?
Yes, I did. I had an ice pack that we switched out for about 12 hours or so. It
Hmm.
wasn't that long. And then I took, I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was ibuprofen, but it was something to keep the swelling down.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't take any, you know, he didn't prescribe anything or anything. It was just over the counter medicine. And I was up walking around. We went out to eat that night. I mean, you know, I felt I could have gone home that day, you know, flown home. Definitely didn't feel like I had just had a surgery or anything like that.
Did you feel well enough that you could like actually do anything while you were there in Utah?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that night, so I had the RFA that morning, and I have a really good friend that lives in Salt Lake City. And so I got together with her that evening. And I mean, we weren't, you know, running a marathon. I mean, we were just sitting talking. But I mean, I felt well enough, you know, to sit and visit with her. And then the next day, we took a day trip out to Heber Valley, and we rode a train. And I mean, like, we did all kinds of stuff. We had a whole vacation after RFA.
Wow.
We did a 10-day vacation in Utah and Colorado. And I felt perfectly well enough to do all of that. So that was really nice. It was just,
awesome.
Recovery was so fast, you know, I mean, compared to a thyroidectomy, you know, it was so fast, so non-invasive. It was great. I loved it.
That's amazing. I think there's a whole, I'm kind of brainstorming this whole side of the fact that RFA a lot of times is something you have to travel for, and how most of us who do this want to make the most of our trip if we're going to go somewhere far away. So it's like, go have your RFA, and then what else can you do for fun while you're there? Because you feel well enough for the most part. I didn't feel great after my first RFA, but my second one, man, I was out exploring all over the place the next day. So yeah, I think it's really amazing that we have this technology now to treat this without having to do so much damage and no recovery, basically. Why would you want to have surgery if you could have this? Not saying that surgery is never necessary. It is in some cases, but if it's not, you know, why would you?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's the end of this segment. To keep watching, click here. Or YouTube thinks you might like this video. If the story resonates with you, give this video a thumbs up or consider subscribing. And never forget to always educate yourself and be your own health advocate.